Still, I had a heavy drinking phase in college, unfortunately. But I guess it's good that I got it out of my system. There was an upcoming frat party that my friends Deanna and Kayla wanted to go to. I was not one to ever say no to a party, unless I was already deathly hungover, and even then I'd sometimes be known to still go out. I was living in a house off campus with three other girls. We were not a sorority house or team house or anything like that, just four friends renting a house together. I believe it was a Kappa Sigma party that we were going to. The house was about 20 minutes away from campus. We pre-gamed pretty heavily at our house, and then we called an Uber, which we all split on the Uber ride there. We pre-gamed some more, which was a recipe for disaster. By the time we showed up to the party, I was borderline blacked out. I just barely remember the layout of that house. I'd never been to a CA party besides that night. It's weird. I have short spans of memory from that night. I vaguely remember the outside, that there were a bunch of frat guys standing out front of the house, and then I remember the DJ in the living room and the two beer pong tables in the kitchen. I was later told that I played beer pong with some random frat guy and ended up talking to him in a corner for a big chunk of the night, but after that nobody knows where I went. I couldn't even tell you the last thing I remember before waking up sleeping on the grass on the side of the road in a daze. My head was throbbing. I had to still be somewhat intoxicated. It was pitch black outside. I was laying by a bunch of trees, like a wooded area apart from the university. There wasn't much up there besides woods and the occasional little town. There were a couple light posts further down the road, so I wasn't just laying in complete darkness. I patted down my pockets looking for my phone, and I had a meltdown when I realized my pockets were empty. I was also missing my crossbody bag. I had absolutely nothing on me. I started to freak out. I couldn't even call for help, let alone check the time or where I was. I looked around the immediate area by where I was sleeping. Nothing. My white shirt was stained with dirt, but that was the least of my worries. I started walking down the road closer to the light posts. I was starting to realize there were no buildings in sight. I was on some completely random back road. I leaned on the light pole for a few minutes, wondering what to do. I decided I'd wait for someone to pass by and ask for help. It took a long time, though, at least 15 minutes before I noticed headlights down the road. I stepped out onto the road, waving my arms and jumping, trying to ensure I got their attention. The car slowed to a stop on the side of the road. I approached the car, and the guy inside rolled down the window. Once he asked me if I was all right, I told him I was stranded without a phone and needed a ride home. He told me to get in, and I did, making sure to let him know how much I appreciated it. He, of course, asked me about my predicament, how I found myself stranded on the side of the road. I told him I was at a party, and the next thing I remembered was waking up on the side of the road. In hindsight, I should not have said any of that. I should have been as vague as possible. Not let this guy know that I got completely trashed and was vulnerable. He asked why I didn't call for help, and I told him I lost my cell phone too. The guy looked at me like I was... I looked back at him for a second, and this was the first time I really analyzed his features. He was like 35. He wasn't the best-looking guy. He had a thin goatee and a big nose. I gave him my address to put into his house as he drove. He put the address in, and then I heard him say under his breath, "Okay, here we go." I asked how far away we were, and he said about 20 minutes. That sounded about right, since the frat house was about 20 minutes from our house. I thought things would go smoothly. I'd get dropped off at the house where Kayla and Dina would be waiting for me with my belongings, but nothing can ever go that smoothly. The man spoke in a gentle voice. Basically, the entire time he was asking basic questions. At first, his soft voice was almost in a weird way, off-putting, like why was he talking in an almost whisper in the car? We drove on and on for what seemed like over 20 minutes on the same road. I started to get concerned, and so I asked him how much further we had. He didn't respond right away, so I said, "Sir," and he went HM, and I repeated my question. He said in his soft voice, "Not far." This wasn't right. Our house is in town, yet we were still on the same back road with nothing but trees everywhere. I started noticing in my peripheral vision that he would look at me multiple times, like he'd move his whole head to stare at me for a few seconds and then look back at the road. I was starting to feel sick. I asked him if he put the right address in, and he said, yes. Then he said, "What color underwear are you wearing?" as he put his hand on my knee and started rubbing my knee. I moved it away and told him in a desperate voice to please not hurt me. "I just want to get home safe." He said, "Why would I hurt you?" After saying this, he pulled onto the grass on the side of the road and put the car in park, and he was about to lean over towards me and do something like put his arms around me, but I didn't let him. I opened the door and ran into the woods. Luckily, I was wearing my Air Force on, so I didn't have a hard time running in the woods. I ran only just enough to be out of sight from the car when I could no longer see its headlights. I heard the man, for the first time, raising his voice, and he yelled into the woods, "Where you at? I just want to like your—" I put my hands over my mouth, not only to muffle my breathing, but because of pure fear. I waited and waited until I heard a car door slam shut and the sound of a car speeding off. I waited a few more moments before walking back to the road, confirming he was gone. I felt truly helpless. I didn't want to run into that man again, but I also needed someone else to help me. I waited just at the edge of the woods for another car to come, and eventually one did. I saw the headlights approaching from afar, but I waited until I was sure that it was a different car before jumping out and waving my arms and yelling. The car came to a stop. It was another man. This guy, a little older. I sat in the back seat this time. I was so shaken up that I hardly spoke apart from answering whatever questions about my predicament. He asked, thankfully, this man dropped me off at the house. It was like 4 a.m. at this point. My friends were still awake waiting for me. They had my phone and my bag. They were contemplating calling the police if I didn't come back by morning. No one had any clue who I left with or how I ended up on the side of the road. The boy who I was with claims he wasn't the one to leave with me. In fact, there's no solid proof that I even left with anyone, but that leaves no explanation how I ended up sleeping on the side of the road. I cut back heavily on the drinking after this night, and I never want to be in a situation again where I have to hitchhike music out of the dark forest. I was hitchhiking from Leify, Germany to Paris. He was a Frenchman, a somewhat dirty and unshaven driver, small and shabby. He agreed to give me a ride in his car, a ride with him to Paris, where I needed to pick up. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed our story today. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to stay updated with our latest videos. Thank you for your continuous support. We appreciate all your comments and encouragement. If you have any suggestions or stories you would like to hear, please leave them in the comments. See you in the next video.